transitioning now, you're familiar with the red heifer sacrifice, of course. So have you seen our video?
Of course.
You have? Okay. So I knew nothing about this a couple of months ago. And it was actually this Twitter account and this Instagram page that we collaborate with sometimes in terms of doing research, Propaganda versus Truth. They're massive on Instagram, great channel, I think operated by a husband and wife, really good people. And they messaged me and they said, hey, did you hear about this red heifer thing? You know, they made an announcement marking 100 days, and they cited one of the reasons, the justifications for the October 7th attack was the sacrifice of the red heifers. Do you want to do a video on it? If you do, here's some research we can provide you with. So I sat on it for a bit, then I started doing research, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazier than I thought. And I started digging deeper and deeper. And I made this video, and it performed really well because apparently it's a trending topic, not just for Muslims, but it's a trending topic for Christians and Jews as well. And everyone is interested in the topic for different reasons. So Muslims view it as like this apocalyptic, catastrophic event. Some Christians view it, there's debate of course, but some Christians say Jesus is the temple. There is no temple that should be rebuilt. So we don't actually believe this. Other Christians are like, no, we do need the temple to be rebuilt because we need Jesus to return, and he won't return unless there's a temple. And then of course you have Jews who were like, it's part of our faith. We have to rebuild the temple and the Messiah will come back, et cetera, et cetera. So everyone is, interested in this topic for different reasons. But because of that, it was trending, and our video went viral. It's our most watched video on YouTube. Talk to us about the red heifer sacrifice. Is there anything we missed in our video, or what do you want the audience to understand about this red heifer sacrifice and how it ties to the temple and potentially, a much more catastrophic situation?
I think what you covered in the video is pretty comprehensive. Like that is basically what the red heifer is supposed to be. It's supposed to purify for the reconstruction of the temple. This will be the third temple. So all of that is accurate. I think what can really be emphasized more is the role of the Messiah and the idea of the Messiah, because that's where things really get hot, you could say, for all three religions. Because Muslims and Christians agree that the Messiah is Jesus Christ. But the Jewish idea of a Messiah, they obviously rejected Jesus Christ as the Messiah, but they believe that the Messiah is the figure that is going to bring, the whole world under Jewish rule. And they view this as like a positive thing, like this will be peace and justice for the entire world. But the idea is that the Messiah will come and build the temple. Like those two events coincide. Some say the Messiah comes first. Others say the temple is built first. But the role of the Messiah and his position as this figure who is messianic, like the messianic age, which will involve violence, which will involve war, the Messiah is the one that's going to usher that in. Now, Muslims and Christians also believe that with variations. But what's interesting is the intersection, because according to Islam, the Messiah comes, Jesus Christ will return to earth, and his first major act is going to kill the Antichrist, or the Dajjal, Masih Dajjal, which Dajjal means like deceiver, or arch deceiver. And so when Jesus returns and he kills the Antichrist, well, who is this Antichrist figure? And what's interesting is that Christians, the earliest Christian theologians, like Irenaeus, believe that the Antichrist was Jewish, which is interesting. And other early church fathers also believe that the Antichrist is Jewish. Muslim, according to some traditions, the Antichrist also has a Jewish lineage, or a lot of his followers are going to be Jewish, which is interesting because obviously, according to Judaism, the Messiah is going to be a Jew and is going to be followed by Jews. Another interesting fact is that within Judaism, the Messiah is sometimes described as the Son of God. The Messiah is from the line of David. And in the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible, David is sometimes described as the Son of God. And the messianic figures are considered to be sons of God, or sometimes
is this
even
metaphorical,
God.
or is this literal? They actually believe the Son
literal.
of God.
I mean, the language is literal, like it's the Son of God. So, I mean, I had a whole debate recently on whether Judaism is really monotheistic or not, and pointed out a lot of examples of polytheism that you find within the Old Testament, within the Hebrew Bible. A lot of language in the Hebrew Bible is polytheistic or henotheistic, and they do have this idea of sons of God. That doesn't become the dominant interpretation of rabbinic Judaism after the 6th century, but they still have that within their books and that in their tradition.
So we experienced some technical difficulties, unfortunately. I should have done a better job clearing the SD card. So if you ever want to do a podcast, okay, don't sit down with a great guest like Daniel Hakikuchu. How do you pronounce your last name correctly, actually?
You did a great job.
Yeah. Is that
you could pronounce it with like a more lane sound.
Hakikuchu?
Yeah.
This is the way?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when you sit down with a guest like this, you got to make sure there are no interruptions. He was riffing. We were talking about the Mahdi, the end of the world, and it was all ruined because of this. But, since we paused, I might as well tell you about today's sponsor, the Dajjal. He would like to recruit you to his demonic and satanic army so he can destroy the world. And he wants to recruit you, and he sponsored this video, and for $500, we're willing to join his mission. I'm kidding. But, since we're on the topic, I'm going to try to bring us back to what we were talking about. The Dajjal, is he like the most epic troll of all time? What is his mission, his intent? Obviously, a test from God, right? But if we were to put ourselves in his shoe, does he have some type of childhood trauma? Not to joke too much about it, but seriously, what's his deal? He's like, let me just come and end the world. Like, what's this guy's story?
So, as for his motivations and intentions, Allahu Alam, Allah knows best. But he primarily works through deception, and he is going to come to dominate and control the entire globe. And the narrations from the Prophet ﷺ make it very clear that those who follow him will experience prosperity and wealth, and those who reject him will suffer poverty, and they will suffer from hunger and destitution. So it's the greatest fitna. It's one of the greatest fitan, or trials and tribulations that humanity will face. And that's why he's known. Like, all prophets warned about the Antichrist. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was no different. And he gave us the most description of who this person is. And one of the other defining characteristic of the Antichrist is that he is one-eyed. And what does that mean? One-eyed. There's a misconception that him being one-eyed means that he's like a cyclops, like with one big eye in the center of his head. That's not it. He has two eyes, but one eye is deformed. It's a defective eye, and it's like sunken like a grape. And that's what the authentic narrations say. So, and then how you know that he's a liar is that he's one-eyed, but God, Allah, is not one-eyed. Right? Allah is not one-eyed, and that's the wording of the narration. So what's significant about this Antichrist and how it intersects with the red heifer issue, the temple issue, waiting for the Messiah issue, is that in the Islamic tradition, we know that the Antichrist will claim to be a Messiah. He'll claim to be a son of God and divine, and then eventually he'll claim to be God himself. And what's interesting is that the Messiah that is being waited for by Jews, according to the Jewish tradition, also has been described as the Son of God and even God within the Hebrew Bible. And in a recent debate that I had, I bring in these texts and I quote them, and I make the argument that we have this kind of false impression, especially as Muslims, that, well, Christianity is Trinitarian, Hinduism has polytheism, but Judaism and Islam, those are the only two monotheistic religions. But this is a misconception, because within Judaism, there's like a monotheistic strand, but there's also a polytheistic strand. There's a henotheistic strand. They do have language within the Torah of there being a divine council of gods, there being sons of God, like that kind of language.
What is henotheistic?
Henotheism is the idea that many gods exist, but you worship one God. Like there's this idea that within Judaism prior to the 6th century, so according to Jewish belief, Moses came in 1500 BC, 1300, roughly that time. But by the 6th century BCE, what archaeological findings have shown, and biblical scholars and archaeologists show, is that Jews at that time were very polytheistic, and they believed in a head god named El and his divine wife Asherah. And they had sons. They had like 70 sons, and one of those sons was Yahweh. And each son was assigned to like a people. So, but the Jewish people had Yahweh as their God. But there's like a whole pantheon of gods, basically. And then over time, as later Jews tried to reconcile the monotheistic strands and the polytheistic strands, they kind of combined this idea of El and Yahweh. It's really one God. Yahweh was basically promoted to this position of being the head god. Because this is what Muslims take for granted sometimes. Like, we do have like difference of opinion on certain aspects of theology, but it's like differences of, okay, well, how do we interpret the Arsh, like the throne of God? Like, what does that really mean? Like, is it a literal throne, or is it something metaphorical? Or that's like the range of disagreement theologically that we find amongst Muslims. But when you look at Judaism or Christianity, like in Judaism, their debates are historically, is there like one God, or is it like a pantheon of gods, or is there like, that's a huge difference. And when they're trying to reconcile that historically and come up with like one manuscript or one text of the Bible, you have a lot of things that you have to edit out. You have to edit out the polytheism. But there's always a paper trail. There's always remnants that, oh, you missed, that verse, and that verse talks about a council of gods, or that verse talks about the sons of God. You missed that when you were trying to, reinterpret everything according to monotheism. So that's the way that biblical scholars will actually study the Bible, and they'll look at different variants of the Bible, because you have the main Bible that Jews read today is based on the Masoretic text. It's a specific variant of the Bible, but there's also other variants like the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were discovered, and it kind of blew biblical studies out the water, because you have a Hebrew Bible, and it has these major variations with what the Bible that people read today, even though the Dead Sea Scrolls are dated earlier. So there are different variants of the Bible. That's another problem that Muslims don't have, alhamdulillah, with the Quran.
Trust nothing. No law.